Good evening, everyone. I am Anjali Kumari. On behalf of Nyaya Shastra, I welcome you all to this webinar on international human rights. Today, we have with us Ms. Diana Constantine, esteemed barrister and international lawyer at 33 Bedford Row Chambers, London, England. We welcome you, ma'am. Now, I request you, ma'am, to commence this webinar.
And I would like to thank Nyaya Shastra organization who invited me to engage with you in this very meaningful lecture because there is a lot of things on stake on the international community. And I'm just going to share with you a bit of an insight of what international criminal law is, the four core crimes of the ICL, which stands for International Criminal Law, and also touching bases upon what is going on globally. If I may give you a bit of a context and take you now in the courtroom in The Hague. And I do remember, in particular, the case of Abderrahman, also known as the Ali Kushab, which is the situation of Sudan in Darfur. I do remember that the judge leaned forward. It was the courtroom in The Hague, and it was completely still. The court usher read the charges aloud: crimes against humanity, war crimes. And in the dock sat the alleged leader of the Janjaweed militia. As I said, his name was Abderrahman, also known as Ali Kushab. He is accused, as we currently speak, for 31 counts of war crimes, crimes against humanity, allegedly committed in Darfur, Sudan. Abderrahman didn't flinch. And I remember thinking, this isn't just law. This is history unfolding, person by person, charge by charge. I met one of the victims, Hassan, in Ottawa a long time ago, before this trial began. And with tears in his eyes, he asked me a question, and I still carry that question with me. Why does the world allow atrocities like this to happen? In 2016, I began my journey representing Rome Statute crimes before the International Criminal Court. I'm going to use the abbreviation as ICC. I first worked as assistant to counsel to Omar Clooney, and later with Natalie von Wangenhausen, lead counsel for the Common League representative of victims in the Abderrahman case. It's a trial that continues to shape how we think about justice, responsibility, and what it means to hold perpetrators to account. Years ago, I walked into the ICC as a junior counsel. I didn't fully grasp at the time that that building, quite clinical, almost cold, was on the front line of something much bigger. The global effort to deliver justice when the stakes are humanity itself. A few years later, Abderrahman was arrested. It was a moment that would shift the course of my career and in many ways my life. He was a man accused of ordering mass executions, systematic rape, torture, and the forced displacement of Darfur in Sudan. 31 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity. For years he was a wanted man evading arrest. But when he finally surrendered in 2020 and was transferred to The Hague, the abstract principles of justice became something else, entirely real, urgent, and deeply human. Because the trial wasn't just Abderrahman. On the trial was a system trying to hold him accountable. A system that asks, can we, the world, come together, prosecute the worst crimes imaginable, and can we do it fairly, credibly, and without fear or favor? And that is why the courtroom matters. Not just for justice in the moment, but for memory, for history, for building a collective literature, that says, as long as atrocities are taking place, the world is watching, the record exists, the truth will not disappear. It's easy to become cynical, especially in the field when trial takes decades and convictions are rare. And I'm referring to the International Criminal Court, the ICC. At that moment, to speak the truth, to become part of the record that refuses silence, it's one of the greatest virtues. However, it doesn't erase the past. It doesn't undo the pain. But it tells the world this happened and someone is being held accountable. And that's why I do this work. International criminal law and human rights isn't about theories. It's about people. It's messy. It's slow. But it's powerful when it works. Perhaps what you don't see in the courtroom drama, you would see the crisp charges, the poised prosecutors, the quiet tension. It's everything else behind it. The hundreds of hours of spending in drafting legal arguments, cross-checking factors across scattered reports, navigating international law that is still evolving, the long nights working through conflicting translations, political pressure, sudden procedural shifts, the challenge of holding a case that has been built of years of chaos and collapse, and the responsibility of making it stand up in the courts. It is not glamorous, it is slow, it is heavy, and often invisible. But it's where justice begins. I felt that weight, and I carry that with me. That's why I do this work, and why I want to bring you with me and inside the ICL, the International Criminal Law. And the best way to begin with ICL is to look into the four core crimes, also known as the Rome Statute crimes. And I take you through those four core crimes as we are all watching the Israel-Palestine conflict to unfold. As you may know from your media accounts or the mass media, that Israel now is blocking all humanitarian aid from entering the Gaza Strip, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. Arrest warrants are still pending against the leaders of the Israel nation, an extraordinary moment in the ongoing debate about accountability and justice on the international stage. At the same time, Sudan remains on the grip of relentless violence. Amid this devastation, it is very hard to find light. But there are moments that remind us of what justice means. However delayed, it can still mean something. And I was involved in one such moment. When Abderrahman was sitting at the ICC, he was wearing a blue suit and sat silently on the dock, the former military leader of Darfur, Sudan. The survivors of this situation had waited nearly 20 years for this moment. And as the prosecution laid out this case, murder, rapes, forced displacement, something rare happened in international justice. It felt like there was still hope, that we have a platform that matters, that justice, however imperfect, it is still possible. But even as we reflect on that moment of accountability, we must also remember justice doesn't bring back those who lost their lives. So at this point, I'm going to explore with you this fragile space between justice and impunity, between despair and hope. The first crime, genocide. Genocide is the deliberate attempt to wipe out a group because of their ethnicity, nationality, race, or religion. It's not just mass killing. It is a targeted extermination with the intent to destroy a group as such. Proving genocide requires evidence of intent, so it's not just the act, but the purpose behind it. The Rwanda genocide in 1994 is one of the clearest examples. In trials at the ICTR, which is the Yugoslavia court, prosecutors proved that lists were made, hate speech was broadcast on radio, and neighbors were turned into executioners. In court, survivors testified with unimaginable bravery, and in particular, one woman said, "I was meant to die because I was born Tutsi. That was my crime." Genocide is a uniquely grave crime under international law, and what sets it apart from other mass atrocities is the requirement of dolus specialis, which means special intent. This means that beyond committing acts such as killing, causing serious harm, or forcibly transfer populations, the perpetrator must have the specific intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. Second core crime, the war crimes. Those are serious violations of the laws of war, rules meant to protect civilians, prisoners, and even enemy soldiers. Things like killing civilians, attacking schools or hospitals, torturing detainees, or using child soldiers. In the Abderrahman case, which is still ongoing at the ICC, he was prosecuted for war crimes allegedly committed in Darfur between 2003 to 2004. Prosecutors said that he led the Janjaweed militia that attacked villages, looted homes, burned people alive, raped women, and displaced tens of thousands. In one courtroom moment, a witness described being forced to flee her village barefoot while gunmen shot at children. These are not just crimes of war, they are crimes of terror. And what makes this case historic is that it is the first ever trial at the ICC related to Darfur, to Sudan. The arrest warrant was issued in 2007, and it took 15 years to get a perpetrator in relation to the Darfur situation to court. I'm afraid that's international law, that's international justice, slow, sometimes political, but persistent. And in court, these crimes must be proven with exact detail, because the burden of proof is beyond reasonable doubt. It is a criminal burden. So therefore, exact details include dates, orders, locations, victims, chains of command. Justice moves slowly, but it moves deliberately. The third crime we're going to touch bases on is the crimes against humanity. Crime against humanity are about scale and coordination. Murder, rape, torture, or persecution, when carried out as a widespread or systematic attack on civilians. The ICTY, at the court, a woman testified about organized rape counts. Those weren't isolated crimes. They were part of a broader strategy to ethnically cleanse certain areas. One woman said that she was assaulted daily for weeks, not just by one soldier, but by many, in a camp overseen by commanders. Likewise, in the case that works, the Abderrahman case, the Sudan situation, prosecutor alleged that the attacks weren't random. They were ordered. Whole villages were bombarded, men were executed, women were enslaved, and survivors were forced to flee. it's not just the brutality, it's the system behind the brutality that defines crimes against humanity. The last crime that I shall briefly touch upon, it is the fourth one, the fourth Rome Statute crime, the crime of aggression. Now, this crime, it is the most politically sensitive of the four crimes. It means launching an illegal war without justification and using armed force against another state. This crime was actually prosecuted at the Nuremberg trial. The Nuremberg was the first trial, international criminal trial. Amongst other crimes, it also tried the crime against peace. But since 1945, it almost disappeared from the courtroom. Now, you may wonder why that is. That's because prosecuting the crime of aggression means putting political leaders on trial. It means putting or bringing at the ICC presidents, prime ministers, and defense ministers. Recently, in 2022, the conversation reunited after Russia allegedly invaded Ukraine. Now, could Putin be tried for the crime of aggression? Maybe. But the ICC's jurisdiction is limited. And that's why lawyers and governments are now calling for a special tribunal, because the crime is real, even if the path to justice is blocked. It's the most symbolic crime and the hardest one to prosecute. However, the truth is that these crimes aren't abstract. When you're in the courtroom, you feel them in the room. You see the faces of the survivors and the stillness of the accused. You watch the judges wrestle with the trauma and law, one fact at a time. In my own work, I reviewed video footage of villages destroyed, heard stories of forced displacement, and seen the quiet pain of people who just want someone, anyone, to say, this was wrong. That's what ICL does. Slowly, imperfectly, but powerfully. It names the crimes. It demands accountability. And I did touch upon the Nuremberg trial, and I just want to elaborate briefly about it because in 1945, we said never again. And this never again has not echoed all these years. So I feel it is my duty towards you, but to whoever is listening this, to reflect a bit the essence of the Nuremberg trial, the Nuremberg legacy. The Nuremberg trial was the first major international effort to bring war criminals to justice, and it set the foundation of global justice. But even 80 years later, the question remains, is global justice working? In 2025, as I'm currently speaking to you, we continue to see war, genocides, and crimes against humanity around the world. We see the failures of international justice are just as glaring as its successes. For example, the Gaza situation, decades of ongoing conflict, with civilians caught in the crossfire, and accusations of war crimes from both sides of the conflict, and an alleged genocide committed against the Palestinians. Despite calls for accountability, those responsible often escape justice. In 1945, as the smoke of war, the Second World War, began to clear, the world was left with an unprecedented challenge. How do we deal with monstrous crimes committed during the Second World War? The Allies convened the Nuremberg trials, where Nazi leaders were put on trial for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. It was the first time individuals were held accountable for such horrors, not just states. Now, those trials were revolutionary in many ways. They established the principle that individuals, not just states, are criminally responsible for their actions. This sets the legal groundwork for what we are called now international criminal law and the famous Nuremberg principles. But I can't emphasize this enough. Nuremberg trials, weren't perfect. Those were selective, only prosecuting Axis leaders, leaving out crimes committed by Allied forces. And the court was accused of being a tool for the victors to impose their version of justice. Still, they marked a key moment in the evolution of global justice. Now, fast forward to 2025, the world is still facing the same atrocities, and yet international justice is still struggling to hold perpetrators accountable. So the ICC has faced and is still facing enormous challenges. And those are mainly three. The first one, impunity in powerful nations. Countries like US, Russia, and China don't recognize the ICC jurisdiction. Number two, long delays in trials. Cases drag on for years. Look at the Sudan case that I've just been referring to throughout my lecture, with few convictions. And thirdly, there are limited resources and, most importantly, a restricted political will. Countries often ignore or even undermine the court's authority. One of the most glaring examples of those limitations of international justice is the ongoing crisis in Gaza and Sudan. In Gaza, the conflict between Israel and Hamas has been escalating. Accusations of war crimes, crimes against humanity, ranging from the targeting of civilians and indiscriminate bombing. Despite the widespread global outrage, meaningful accountability has yet to materialize. In Sudan, the brutal internal conflict continues to unfold. It's been marked by ethnic violence, mass atrocities, and displacement of civilians. You may wonder now, what are the answers? What are the solutions? What's the light in all this darkness? And I'm going to be very frank with you. There are times that I struggle to see the light. There are times at night I can't sleep with the evidence that I see, with the cases I handle, because of the responsibility I feel as an international criminal lawyer. From myself, to you, to each and every one of you, to every child in this world. But at the same time, I find the strength to see the light, despite how distant that may be. My commitment in this life, in this very short span of life that we're all living, I am committed to serve justice, accountability, and to see the light of this. So, where do we go from here? 3 solutions, and a few ideas perhaps to go with it. The first one, we need global commitment to universal jurisdiction, universal accountability. States should require to cooperate with international orders, and we need all countries to ratify the Rome Statute, which governs the ICC. We cannot let powerful nations to continue evade justice, such as the Gaza case, where there is overwhelming evidence of violations. Number 3, we need to strengthen the ICC's authority. ICC must be empowered. We need to build mechanisms that compel countries to comply with the rulings. This could mean stronger sanctions from non-cooperation and a clearer path for enforcing decisions, even in countries that try to block justice. Perhaps a stronger United Nations Security Council could also play a role in enforcing international law. Number 3, we need to focus on the victims. We cannot let proceedings to focus only on the perpetrators. The victims of the war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide must be given a louder voice. We need legal reforms that allow them to participate in a fully and more transparent process. Last but not least, and you are also part of this, it's the global political will. We need stronger global leadership. You, as part of this international community, must stop enabling atrocities through inaction or political considerations. Countries must stop protecting perpetrators of war crimes, and we must end the use of veto in the UN Security Council when it comes to holding war criminals accountable. The international system may have failed in some places, but it's also a call for action for those of us who still believe in justice. And this is where you can make a difference. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found some information and some light in what I said. And in this process, to try to help as many as international lawyers want to be, I am launching a book of how to become an international criminal lawyer that is due to be published in September 2025. So if any of you will be interested to join the book launch, but also the details of it, please let me know so we can include you in the list with my chambers, which is 33 Bedford Chambers based in London. My name is Dana Bostandinivi, and this was the lecture. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Recently, there are issues between states. We have seen Indian-Pakistan war, Russian-Ukraine war, and Israel-Pakistan war, where thousands of lives are at stake and people are facing war atrocities. How ICJ can handle this with the limited jurisdiction, and what reforms you suggest to control the big political players like USA, Russia's atrocities during this situation?
Mr. Anatula, sorry, there was a bit of interference with your question. Do you mind repeating that for me, please? Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. Recently, we have seen some issues between states like Indian-Pakistan war and Russian-Ukraine war, and here now we are seeing Palestinian issue too, where thousands of lives are at stake and people are facing war atrocities. How ICJ can handle this with limited jurisdiction, and what reforms you suggest to control the big political players like US, Russia atrocities during this situation?
With every conflict, and I can't stress this enough, that every conflict has its own special characteristics and its own idiosyncrasies that one has to be aware, understand, and most importantly, listen to those very carefully. I understand your question is about universal jurisdiction, is that right? How we can apply universal jurisdiction, or are you referring to whether it's ICC's jurisdiction for those? Okay,
Universal jurisdiction.
Sorry, universal jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction, it is a recent advancement of international criminal law. And we have seen countries such as Belgium, Sweden, and recently Argentina to deal with universal jurisdiction. So what that means, universal jurisdiction means that in your domestic jurisdiction, you are prosecuting international criminal crimes, such as, for example, genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. It is the crimes that are enshrined in the Rome Statute, and with the universal jurisdiction, it enables every country to prosecute those crimes. Now, the problem with universal jurisdiction is that if there is no enough literature within its own domestic jurisdiction, and of course, the know-how to prosecute those crimes, it imposes the first challenge to do so. But if there is, as I said, if there is the will, and we see that with Ukraine, that they sought education and expertise coming into Ukraine, and to educate the judges and defense counsels and the prosecutors to prosecute the crimes of war crimes and crimes against humanity, it is possible to address those issues internally if there is a will to do so. So Ukraine is dealing with those crimes internally. But universal jurisdiction means that you are prosecuting those type of crimes, the Rome Statute crimes, of other leaders of other countries. So recently in Argentina, they prosecuted for the situation, situation in China. So always a minority in China. And there is alleged a genocide, a cleansing taking place, and they engaged the prosecution of the Argentina to charge those crimes. So I would say, firstly, with universal jurisdiction, it needs understanding, political will, and education when it comes, and training when it comes into prosecuting those type of crimes. Now, with ICC, the International Criminal Court, it needs to fall within its jurisdiction. And there are two ways you can do that. The first one is that you are a signatory to the Rome Statute, which that automatically gives the ICC jurisdiction to trial any of these crimes. Secondly, there may be a referral by United Nations if you're a non-state party to the Rome Statute. So there may be a referral like the Sudan situation. Or there's three ways. And the third one is that another signatory to the Rome Statute refers you to the ICC. So we've seen, for example, South Africa referring went to the ICC and the ICJ for the Israel situation, Israel versus Hamas, Israel versus Palestine. But if we just see beyond those two jurisdictional issues as to how to address each conflict, which I said every conflict has got its own idiosyncrasies, it all comes down, it truly comes down to the will of the people. And when I say the will of the people, you may think it's the political will, but any of you here today truly can be in the future a politician. You have the right to do so. You have the right to pursue that. So if each and every one of us exercises those democratic values as we should, and voting the people that we should empower, I believe that the political will can shift for greater good. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
Thank you. We have seen recent terror attack on India. It's well known as Pahalgam attack, but internationally, the Pakistan haven't got pressured by the big political players and states. Even the IMF provided loan. How can we see this? It is a failure of international law and organizations providing justice to India. or victim countries?
Apologies, I don't understand exactly what the question is about the situation within the.
We have seen a recent terror attack on India right now. Pahalgam attack. It is very heinous attack on India, heinous terror attack, and internationally, Pakistan haven't pressured. Even they got IMF loan for their development. That too in a war situation. How can we see this? Like international justice is not brought to the victim country like India. They haven't justified in how they haven't pressured in Pakistan. Even they left to India. No support given to India. Right? Internationally, support is not given. I can see it as a injustice.
Um, it's not just about India, is it? So it is a combination of where India is, India's allies, um, and this is where ICO, International Criminal Law, it exceeds its. I mean, this exceeds ICL. Everyone may have their own political beliefs or the way that they analyze the geopolitical and diplomatic relations between the countries, and we do get the pressure, the political pressure sometimes when we trial matters at the ICC or if you're watching sometimes live stream on the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, and the lack of international engagement in certain conflicts, which is not just India. There are more conflicts that the international community has not addressed. And you're asking the reason why that is.
Yes, ma'am. I'm asking, is international law is failed to provide justice to the victim countries like India during these terror attacks? They haven't punished the country which did this heinous crime to committed this terror attack to.
There are two things here. The first one is that for the ICC to address any situation, you need to exhaust the domestic venues. So if there is a country that can address issues within them, then ICC does not have jurisdiction. So I believe with India, this is what's happening. But despite that, and I can see this as well with Cyprus, the Republic of Cyprus, which is since 1974, a third of the island is being occupied after the invasion by Turkey. When it comes into the leading a country, when the leading and taking forward and advancing a nation, it is when the leader understands it is not just about the country itself. And there is this Czech writer, his name is Kafka. He said that the notion of me, the ego itself, does not exist. It starts existing when you realize that it's only us. And I will leave it there. But you need to explore domestic, yes. Thank you.
My name is Devang Sharma. I'm a final year law student. First of all, I need to mention that your deep understanding of human rights and international law really affects me, and I'm also interested in international law. My question here is that, as you mentioned, that all the state needs to come together in order to fight against the war crimes and atrocities against human rights. But is it possible in multipolar world where multiple superpowers? How can we make them to sit together and ask for this huge change? Because then they don't have the superiority, the power they hold normally. Basically, they are losing their position as a superpower when we just started to hold them accountable. Also, as you mentioned, the United Nations Security Council is also led by some superpowers. They have permanent seat and have the right to vote, and no one can get against that vote, right? So how can we force them to leave that situation position and come at the stage where everyone have an opinion and can fight against human atrocities?
I guess that's the question I ask myself still. I'm afraid, Mr. Shah. I'm afraid that there is no answer to that. And it does come down perhaps to what we can do. You know, I can give you a very simple example because I can talk by experience here. I'm practicing international criminal law and human rights. I was in London. I moved to Cyprus, and I'm running for the elections to be a member of the European Parliament here in Cyprus, with also vision in 2028 to run for the presidential elections for Cyprus. And I'm doing this because of that sense of responsibility and knowing that perhaps if I start just looking from within me, then it will be better and easier to help others rather than just me dwelling upon what can I do, where do I start, where do I put pressure. Even if I put pressure, nobody really listens because you're one individual. So it's an internal question. But in my view, this is a personal view, not under my capacity as a barrister, but as a person, that humanity wants very simple things. And I remember one of the victims who represented at the ICC said to me, I want to sit in Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan, near the parliament. He said to me, there is this coffee shop, and it serves an amazing Sudanese tea. I just want to sit there and have my tea. And that really stayed with me. That he doesn't want to be in Canada. You can watch his testimony. He waived confidentiality as well, which is truly, truly admirable what he did. And that stayed with me, that really nobody wants to leave the place if they're happy and they live in peace. Peace, it's so important. You're not going to get bombed or abducted or police using the force disproportionately for someone else. So those values are very old. To live in peace, and from all the sorts of governments and different forms of government. I truly believe that democracy and the rule of law has been and is the best way forward. And if it does help, this is my baby. I've been trying for so long, and it's my first draft of the book. But I just want to share with you just 2 paragraphs of the introduction, which is something I felt deeply at the time when I was writing it. And it says, and I quote, "From Sudan to Gaza, Afghanistan to Myanmar, the world is witnessing a tragic convergence of armed conflict, authoritarianism, humanitarian collapse, and climate catastrophe. The Gaza siege and bombing have decimated infrastructure and denied civilians the barest essentials. In Afghanistan, Myanmar, regimes use force, fear, and the suppression of women and minorities to maintain control, with climate-driven disasters compounding the suffering. These are not isolated crises. They are deeply interlinked violations of international criminal law, humanitarian law, and fundamental human rights. Climate change is not a distant threat. It is a multiplier of injustice, deepening inequalities and increasing the vulnerability of already oppressed minorities. We live in a time when freedom of speech is no longer guaranteed, when the right to protest is being questioned, and when the defenders of justice from Cairo to California are left increasingly vulnerable. Judicial independence is under attack. Artificial intelligence is being deployed in military operations, with little regulation, and the democratic backsliding is no longer the exception, but the trend. We need you. I need you. The world needs international lawyers who are not only trained in law, but moved by justice. We need defenders of the rule of law who understand that their fight is not just in the courtroom, but on the front lines of human dignity. You will not be alone. Others have walked this path before you, and others will walk it after. But in this moment, the next step is yours. And I truly believe that the next steps for the front line of human dignity, it is truly upon each and every one of you listening to me now, it is upon you. The burden is on you. How we live this world, the responsibility shifts upon you. Because you have the privilege to be perhaps in law school, to look into this deeper and understand that nothing is guaranteed. Absolutely nothing. It is truly a war zone where we have to fight for the very basic human rights. And I felt that in the courtroom each and every day when I'm defending or prosecuting.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you for the answer. Also, there is any way that we can connect to you remotely because we live in India. So, is there any way to which we can connect to you?
Of course, yes. I'm very active on social media. I have Instagram, X account, YouTube. What's the other? TikTok. I'm very active on all social media platforms, and by all Facebook. Just I can maybe kindly ask from Nyaya Shastra's team. I can send an email with all my social media handles, and please feel free to drop me a line, and also to let me know. I'm organising a book launch with 33 Bedford Road Chambers, with King's College London Blind Mooting Society, University of Surrey, and also currently, if I may say still, that we have discussions as well with Leiden University, that is regarded as the leader of international law. And of course, recently I've heard from Nyaya Shastra's team that they're also going to be supporting this book launch. So I will be very privileged if any of you would want to join it. It will be held remotely. And the main purpose of this book, but also really trying to train the next generation of international lawyers, which I feel that I'm deeply responsible, is for each and every one of you to truly feel that none of those basic human rights that are given, you have to fight for them, not just for you, but for the people that they can't fight for themselves, people that they are in need. So I know you're watching me, Nyaya Shastra's team, but are we able to, can I send you my social media handles, or shall I just drop them here on the chat? I'm not sure if there is a chat here. Okay, I can look into it, but do we have any more questions? I think we still have about.
Ma'am, can we suggest or show us a path how to from lawyer to how to become an international lawyer from lawyer? You are being an international criminal lawyer, right, ma'am? So I am asking that from being a lawyer to how you became an international criminal lawyer. What was the path, and do you suggest any?
It's a big process, to be frank with you, and I do get asked that question a lot. I've got my YouTube channel for over 6 years, so this has been something that I kept asked, and that's why I wrote this book, because I mean, becoming a lawyer is pretty straightforward. I mean, if you want to be an Indian lawyer, you would know how to do that. But to be an international criminal lawyer, there is nothing written. There is no available source of information to tell you how to be one. So this is the idea of writing this book. I'm afraid that it would take us at least an hour for me to explain you what you need to do and the process to do so, and maybe even more than that. So would it be helpful if I just tell you maybe you can drop me a line and we can arrange the session? I can explain that to you. And of course, if you want to join the book session, I'm still making corrections, to be honest. There we are, How to Become an International Criminal Lawyer. I can give you a bit of an insight. So what I did, I divided in two parts this book. The first one is called The Map, because I'm laying out the landscape for you, step by step, what you need to do. And then I always believe that regardless of whether you do have a map, so even though if I'm giving you the map, you need to have a sense of direction, because even if you have the map and I'm giving it to you, if you don't have a sense of direction, you will be lost in the forest. So I'm very happy about the outcome of this, because with this, it's a complete guide that it will guide you through how to become an international criminal lawyer. But most importantly, it is my gift to you, to each and every one of you, that you want to pursue this very challenging area of law, but also to get to have the know-how. So this is that is the point of this, to get to have the know-how. This is the know-how. This is your map and your sense of direction. We have 4 more minutes, so I'm stretching the maximum we have here within the hour. If you
Can we
have
get,
anyone,
can we know at least like an intro, or like just what steps you have taken to be an international criminal lawyer?
yes. So do you want me to read you the chapters and you can make a note of it, of the chapters? So that will give you a good idea of it. Let's do that. So the map is got 8 chapters, and I tell you how to read this book. And I say that the map covers in chapters 1 to 8. It offers a practical layout of the field. It outlines the core institutions, qualifications, the career milestones from the foundation of international criminal law. This particular section is a guide to the key destinations, whether working for international tribunals, engaging in advocacy and NGOs, contributing to legal scholarship, and joining defense or prosecution teams. And the second part, which is the direction, it's found in chapters 9 to 14, and it takes a broader and more explanatory view. So while you have the milestones, which is laid out in the map, you also need to develop a sense of direction, understanding the evolving frontiers of international law, the values and interests that can shape your path. So let's start with the map. So chapter 1, the starting point is a law degree, but which law school? Chapter 2, you may have a non-law degree, but you're seeking a conversion of your law. So a lot of people may study, I don't know, to be biologists and they decide to be lawyers. Chapter 3, practicing international lawyers. What does that mean? What does that entail? Chapter 4, expanding your horizons. So the path to foreign legal qualifications. Chapter 5, converting your home jurisdiction to the qualification to practice in the UK, so whether solicitor or barrister. Chapter 6, converting your home jurisdiction qualifications to practice as a barrister in the UK. And I'm emphasizing the barrister qualification for many reasons that I'm explaining in this book. Chapter 7, the process of pupillage in the UK. Chapter 8, becoming an international lawyer, engaging with international tribunals and the lists of counsel. So those are the 8 chapters for the map. And the direction, chapter 9, what is ICL? Because sometimes I think a lot of people may not understand what the international criminal law is. So let me give you an example. A lot of times I mean, maybe here in Cyprus, most of it, but they will tell me, oh, I've been charged with theft, can you come and defend me? I said, I may be able to, but you know, I'm specializing in international criminal law is very, very different. So there is sometimes a confusion between whether you practice domestic criminal law or international criminal law. Chapter 10, why become an international criminal lawyer? Chapter 11, court presentation. And I'm referring here as well to the Nuremberg legacy. Chapter 12, the digital age, corporate accountability and international criminal law. This is huge. I mean, even as we speak, the corporate accountability, how is that interlinked with political leaders, with nation leaders, and how it shapes today's world. Chapter 13, space law and climate change. You may think that space law is a distant thing, but it's not. You will be surprised that same with, I mean, I can give a very simple example. I think that UK, before they left India, they signed the salt law. So that means they were the only ones to extract salt from India, and they were charged for it. And if I'm not mistaken, Mahatma Gandhi famously walked to the beach. People followed him. He took the salt, the beach, and said, "Why pay something that nature gives you for free?" Same with space law. It is there. It is free. But I'm afraid that even space law now, it's been militarized and also it's been used by corporations for other purposes. Chapter 14, Dare to be yourself. True stories, three very, very inspirational stories from other lawyers. Some final words, and then at the end I'll provide you with a list of human rights organizations that I always found them to be very helpful to begin with, how it gives you, you put your foot inside the ICL, it's a way. It's about 150 pages, so it's not that big. It's a light book, easy read, and something that I think everyone, even if you haven't started your law degree, it's something that you can access this information. So it's a beautiful moment, but I'm afraid it's been finished and finalized in very, very dark times of humanity. Thank you. Yes, so I can see here that it's been an hour since we had this lecture. I will ask for the team to I will send out all my details. I would love to stay in touch with each and every one of you, and any way that I can assist, even with the Indian Pakistan situation, I'm more than happy to help. All the best. Stay strong. Stay true to yourself. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for taking the time to share your valuable insights with us. Your expertise was truly enlightening. We are also thrilled to announce that Diana ma'am has authored a new book titled How to Become an International Criminal Lawyer, which is set to be launched on 25th of September. Please accept heartiest congratulations on the behalf of whole Nyaya Shastra team for this accomplishment. We all take pride to tell that Nyaya Shastra is a collaborator of this event as a media partner. Once again, thank you, ma'am, and many congratulations and good wishes. Thank you so much, ma'am.